I'm Peter Fortunato, and this is a story of mine called A Christmas Eve Reminiscence. Because my parents were full-time restaurateurs, and we lived in the sprawling building, backstage as it were, open for business 6 days a week, the occasions for quiet family dinners were always rare. As a child, I enjoyed the way our place, the Villa Riccobono, was unique on that country road in the rural Hudson Valley. It had history and atmosphere, and everybody knew the food was good. It had served as a farmhouse to my grandparents, who first moved there from New York, and then as a summer resort they opened to their friends and city cousins, and finally my parents had begun operating it year-round, a business which kept them perpetually at work. So even though I was an only child, there were always people around me. There was always the excitement of dinners and weddings and banquets, the laughter of grown-ups and their pleasure at eating and drinking well. If I was lonely at times for siblings or for the closer presence of my parents, when I was still quite young, I hadn't noticed this. And anyway, when I was 11, I had a horse and a sizable piece of wilderness in which to find solace with him. The Christmas and New Year season was a time of gala events. Party after party filled the large dining room, and business was so good my parents could only afford to be closed on Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day. At those times, we would eat together, and while my grandparents were alive until I was about 10, that made 5 of us at home on the holiday. It is a Christmas Eve after my grandfather and grandmother had both died, however, which keeps returning to my memory. A big snow, a delightful, peaceful snow, fell all day and brought with it the quiet of stopped roads and the cheerful acceptance of isolation out in the country. No one would be coming to the villa that day, and the parking lot wasn't even plowed out. If it hadn't snowed so much, I suppose my parents might have made plans for house calls to their friends in the evening, as they enjoyed doing in other years. But this Christmas Eve, the 3 of us would spend at home alone, and I loved the idea. That was the first winter I owned my horse Flame, and I wasn't riding him too often because the cold made him so peppy I worried about my ability to handle him on slippery trails. Yet in the afternoon, when it was snowing more lightly and the air was warmer, I decided to saddle him up. It was with real pleasure in the preparations that I wrapped a wool scarf around my head, pulled down my Stetson tight on top of that, just as I'd seen cowboys did to ride the winter range in pictures from Western Horseman magazine. Booted myself, gloved myself, and set out on horseback into 8 inches of new powder. Flame had to pick his feet up high to move through all that snow. He quivered energetically, but he was collected beneath me, graceful, his red ears pricked straight, and I sighted between them, scouting the untouched whiteness of the new world we entered. By the time I'd put him up in his stall again, it was twilight. I was happier than I'd ever been with my horse. And as I walked back to the house, I might have been coming home to chow after a day of punching cows on snowy western plains. The place was dark, no lights at the entrance. The dining room and bar shut off and dark alongside the corridor I walked to my family's living quarters. As I remember this moment, glistening with many years of recollection, my parents are already at table, my father presiding before a glass bowl of cold octopus salad, an Italian Christmas specialty. When I enter the room, their warm looks meet me with approval and gladness. My mother knows I am a child who will be a man before long. My father sees something in the way I strip off my gear and quietly come to the table for dinner. It is with thanks that we begin our Christmas, and it is with thanks that I recall this moment in my life when nothing was lacking. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas.